Peace family, welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Jenny Cherie. Please like, comment, and subscribe. But also, if you have not, please add yourself to my Telegram group where I will post updates that happen on my channel. And in addition, please also add yourself to Odyssey, which is a more decentralized platform than YouTube. So we're protecting against censorship.
So like many of you, I was watching where Derek Chauvin received the verdict of guilty for the murder of George Floyd. And I was actually kind of surprised that he didn't just get a lesser sentence, but they actually found him guilty on all 3 counts. So this was something that was definitely a victory for the family, particularly of George Floyd, who can live knowing that at the very least, while the killer of their loved one, their family member, did complete the act and erase that person from this earth, he did face some consequences. And that's not something that a lot of people who are African in this country get to say. But what does the larger system do? It always reminds us that it's still intact in other ways. I want to talk about the horrible murder of Ma'Khia Bryant. I want to talk about this case in light of the fact that, if some of you don't know, I wrote a book called Fostering False Identity in the beginning of this year that talked about a lot of the trauma that happens surrounding the child welfare system in the United States. And the reason why I wanted to write that book is because it's a system that's very much intact, that's very much destroying our families and destroying our children. Children who go into foster care are traumatized. Children who go into foster care are left endangered. And whenever parents are separated from their children, if any of you are parents, you know that the idea or the reality of someone taking your child is like a death in the family. It's like that close loved one, the idea of you not being able to be in their life, that is a death in itself. So it's a very traumatic issue, one that does not get enough light shown on it, something that's very unjust if you look at the ways that certain policies are carried out against our people. So that's why I wrote the book. And this story kind of reminded me of a lot of those realities. Here we are, we're talking about police brutality. Here we are, we're talking about the fact that people can come into our communities and they're essentially a military presence. They're there to ensure that social order is kept intact. They're there to ensure the peace. And the peace tends to mean the peace for the dominant white class in society. In this instance, you had a young girl who, I'm going to go by the accounts of the story that I have heard. So the story that was told was essentially that the 16-year-old girl who's a foster child, meaning right there that she has involvement with this system, that the state came in and said that you cannot be with your parents. They said that you would be safer being inside of a home. It looked like, I'm not sure yet, I don't want to assume, but this might be a type of foster home that had a few other foster children there. So you would be safer in that environment than being with your blood, with your kin. Now, my understanding also is that she also had contact with her biological father and also her biological mother. I've heard her speak out. So this is someone who had parents. There are situations, obviously, where a parent might not be safe for their child. But we have to also understand that those circumstances in themselves are very nuanced, because a lot of the ways that this country will label poverty, will label oppression, white supremacy, they'll label that as being neglectful. For example, let's say the mother had a struggle with some type of addiction because she herself was traumatized. If you look at that as being the societal problem, because the society has failed us, the society has left us damaged, and the society has pumped drugs into our community, then you understand that removing that child from her, the victim, is not the solution. The solution is making that mother, that child, that family safe. Similarly, let's say it's the father, let's say he had to work long hours and he wasn't able to be home. Let's say the father became incarcerated. There's so many instances that happen so much inside of our community because of the vulnerable state we are in. Let's say that was the situation. Is it any better to remove a child from someone who does have a loving father, does have a loving mother? We have to look at this as understand that this is not a system that's built for our safety. It's a system that's built for our destruction. The sooner we realize that, the sooner we realize that this system has to be dismantled and it cannot be a present force over our people. But let's go into the story. So apparently the girl, and this is from what I've heard, details are still coming out. This is why it's kind of hard to report on things when they happen. But the girl supposedly had some adults come to the house, or some older girls from what it looked like, come to the house to fight her. Now, that's something that I'm sure many of you have seen happen. Now, what's being told is that she grabbed the knife in order to protect herself. Now, what you see in the video, the body cam, it's so quick. It basically looks like the cops came on the scene and they just seen this fight and they seen a girl with a knife and they shot her. Now, obviously, if someone has a knife and they're about to kill someone, you probably do have to do some type of force. You might have to shoot them in the leg or something like that. Do you have to shoot them 4 times? That's where it becomes murky, because in my personal opinion, yes, whenever you have a situation where there's a deadly weapon, you have to eliminate that threat. But do you always have to shoot to kill? Well, in the system, they say, yes, you have to shoot to kill, because you have to understand the position that they're taking. The position that they're taking is that once you cross a certain line with us, you are basically there for the taking. If you lose your life as a result, hey, we have no affinity for that. Even though you have other people who have done similar things, but they find ways to de-escalate without actually taking their lives. So the fact is that the system as it operates sees us as disposable, doesn't really have to honor our life, doesn't have to maintain our life. And they can step in and take our life if we ever are doing anything that they deem to be a danger to this society. Now, I want to say again, I'm not justifying her having a knife in itself. We don't know why she had a knife, why she felt like she had to protect herself inside of that sort of way. But I'm saying that I have seen situations where you are getting jumped, and if you don't have a weapon, like, that could be the end of your life. So there's so many different possibilities. Again, let's not get into the details until they come out. But let's also focus on the greater implications, because now you have a girl who she was in state custody. The state that she lived in, Ohio, had custody of her. That she was essentially a child of theirs, essentially, in the eyes of the law. And inside of their custody, this child was killed. She was put in a situation where she was clearly endangered and became a danger to others because of the situation. And she was killed by the state police, and that basically enacts violence against our people. These are the many things that we are subjected to inside of the system. And I just want to give it this lens of saying that we have to look at this George Floyd or Derek Chauvin verdict for what it is. It is one instance. It is one isolated incident. And it's certainly not the narrative. It's certainly not the predominant instance. It's certainly not something that is going to change things going in the future, because if you consider the fact that there have been small instances where people have gotten convicted, but for all of those small instances, you have many murders, you have many deaths, you have many people get off, then you understand that only in certain circumstances where there is clear footage, where the evidence is overwhelming, where our people receive any type of justice. Of course, in most instances, that is not the case. The evidence is small, the evidence is few. So to go back, what I'm trying to really drive home is that we have to make sure that we are actively organizing against the system that had Micaiah inside of a foster home to begin with, the system that separated her from her family, the system that deemed her parents a danger and not the dangers of society that she was going to be subjected to in a foster home, the system that has oftentimes put children in foster homes where the children get brutalized, the children face sexual assault, the children face assault. That same system that has completely just derailed our community. That's the system we have to organize against. If you're only concerned with showing up when someone gets killed, then you are way coming in after the fact. You have to understand that at a certain point, you already lost the battle. I say this all the time. Whenever the person's killed, that was lost. You had an opportunity to get in front of that issue and say that, first of all, before you even take our children, we are going to take our children. We're going to find alternative ways to care for our children. We're going to find alternative social programs that are controlled by us. We're going to have kinship arrangements where we can all collectively care for our children. So before you even get to that point where the girl's in foster care and facing adult violence, that's not even going to get that far. And then on the other side, you also have to say that before you even feel like you can come into our community and you can just shoot up and whatever because you're quickly reacting, we're going to have other measures. We're going to have preventative measures so that we can de-escalate situations. We're going to police our own communities. We're going to organize in our communities. These are the things that you have to be doing around the clock. But for people who show up after the fact and want to protest after that life is lost, want to protest after that verdict is put in, understand that you're not doing doing anything to change the system. In fact, the system lives for you because the system needs your distractions. The system needs you to be focused on one thing while it's doing another thing. So we have to be very clear on where we stand for our people. We have to be very clear on how we're going to attack this thing, because at this point, there's no reason why we're still having these reactionary demonstrations whenever we clearly see that this is just going to keep happening. How many times does this broken record have to go over and over again that you keep seeing African people being killed by the police before you realize that it's not this individual protest that's going to do anything? The only thing that will do anything is when you actually think about the system that is creating that result. But unfortunately, we've been conditioned to react to the instances and not react to the overall state that we are in. So until we have that critical sitting down, thinking, discussion among our people and organizing among our people, until we have that, I'm personally not interested in these reactionary demonstrations, these reactions that we see on social media. I'm only interested in the building that has to take place long after the smoke is cleared. So I'm hoping that we have our eyes open to the complexities of Ma'Khia's situation, her being a foster child, her being someone who was subjected to violence, her family being destroyed, and hopefully we can get real justice in the sense of systemic change, where our families will not be up for the taking, where our families will not be easily disrupted, where our families will not be subjected to the system of white supremacy as we are on a continual basis. That's all I have for this. I would love to hear your thoughts, and I will see
A poem for us. The African woman. Beautiful, dark, luxurious, fearless, selfless, power. Through all the words thrown our way, we are the beautiful source. Discarded, disrespected, but highly favored and replicated. We are her, she is us, the African woman. Uncompromising, steadfast, and unwavering in love. Innocent, playful, generous, and deserving. We are African women. At home and abroad, we are delicious melanin, splendid carbon. We drink ourselves to death with love and compassion, forgiving and thorough. We are African women. Join us in May for our symposium on Pan-African women.
Hey family, this is Tierney Cherie. I'm here to make an announcement that I'm very, very excited to make. I'm excited because I really think this is something that is important for our people. Otherwise, I would not have devoted so much time and energy towards it. So I finished my first book, and the book title is Fostering False Identity, the Child Welfare System's Design of Social Control of the Black Family. Now, why is this book something that I think will be very important for our community? Well, number one, it's dealing with the system of white supremacy, particularly the way that the system has targeted our children. If you don't know, our children are literally our future. Without our children, we have no future. And so understand that the system is very crafty when figuring out what to derail first. And to me, it's no mistake that the system particularly went after the Black family. If you look at what happened whenever we were enslaved by this system, and continues to go after the Black family, continues to go after Black children, continues to try to villainize African parents. So for that, I wanted to particularly talk about this subject. Now, the other thing that the book will deal with is our African identities. Why is it that our African identities are a threat to this system? Why is it that whenever we want to identify ourselves as being African, we get so much drawback inside of the Black community? I think a lot of us are not aware of the history of assimilationist thought inside of our community, this idea that we have to be close to white in order to be accepted. And so that's another subject that we delve into in this book. So I'm hoping that anyone who is, obviously, if you're a parent, a Black parent and you really want to understand why it is that these systems are going after your children, I encourage you to read this book. I hope that it will arm you with a lot of knowledge and a lot of foresight, not just about how to protect your own children, but how to organize in your community, because that's really the purpose of the book, is to say that we have to organize among ourselves in order to protect ourselves from this white supremacist system. And then obviously, if you're an organizer in general, this is something that I think is important for you to read, because like I said, this is a subject in the Black community that we just don't discuss enough. Child welfare is not something that is going to get enough attention. People, obviously, we organize them around other causes, but this is one that is really important that I feel like we have to pay more attention to.